Chapter 18. The watchful that Layla returned to didn't feel at all like the watchful that she had left that morning. There were strangers about, and not the kind that she had expected. Where she anticipated merchants, she saw strange men and women in chainmail and travel-stained boots, marching in groups of 2 and 3, calling orders to one another and cursing anyone in their way. Spears and swords were everywhere, and Layla's skin crawled at the sight of them. Her friends and neighbors eyed the newcomers with the same suspicion that she did, but all of them seemed caught up in the same flurry of activity. By the light of dozens of torches, they hustled about carrying boxes and buckets, timbers of wood, dumping them in large piles at bow-shot distances up Watchful's street. There, soldiers with intent looks sifted through the piles. It was manic, a cacophony of noise and confusion that made the downwind seem serene, even on its rowdiest nights. Layla plowed on through, head down and firewood in hand. She'd gone back for it once that she had calmed down, the need not to waste greater than her initial fear. No one paid her much mind except to curse mindlessly at her when she got in the way. More than once, she'd nearly been bludgeoned or impaled by someone hurrying downhill with a box in their arms or a stack of wooden boards on their shoulders. Layla considered stepping into the downwind to ask Ulian what was going on and to get out of the barrage of noise and bodies, but crossing the street to the tavern felt like far too much trouble. And besides, Layla felt an urge to know her mother and Ollie were safe. So she kept to the side of the street and worked her way up the hill. When she had gotten within a stone's throw away from her home, she stopped. Firelight poured forth from the cracks in the window slats, illuminating 2 figures who stood by the front door. There wasn't much about them that Layla could make out. They wore cloaks and had the cowls low. One loomed large with a gloved hand holding a smoldering pipe. When they put the pipe to their lips, the glow of the bowl illuminated bushy eyebrows and a thick beard. The other cloaked figure seemed a touch thinner and stood unmoving. They both faced Layla.
"Come here, girl,"
the one with the pipe called, beckoning her forward with his free hand. Layla didn't move. She looked about, praying there was another girl around. There wasn't. The man stepped forward.
"Come on, get over here. We don't bite."
Layla was fairly certain that if someone needed to say that, it probably wasn't true. Her feet stayed planted where they were. She could turn and run, but she wasn't sure where she would go. And if Ollie and Ma were inside, then did they need her help? Could she help? The second cloaked figure lifted their hands and dropped their cowl, revealing a woman's face with tightly braided red hair falling over one shoulder. Her eyes were hard, her chin scarred, and she looked more annoyed than dangerous. That was until she put her hands on her hips, pushing her cloak back to reveal the pommel of a sword. She opened her mouth to speak just as the door to the home opened before her. Ollie stepping out into the dark street.
"Oi, Layla, that you?"
"Oi," Layla called back, raising a shaking hand. Ollie waved her over.
"Get on in here.
Ma's worried sick." Layla stepped forward, eyes on the cloaked figure. "We got visitors," she said.
They're here for me. Should be all right."
"Of course they are," Layla said, doing her best to squeeze by the man and woman while also staying at arm's length away. "Explains everything."
"Is that firewood?"
"Shut up." A moment later, orange light and warm air washed over Layla, the door closing behind her with a squeal of hinges. Her mother sat with eyes locked on a large bag spread on the table, her mouth slightly ajar. The whole home smelled of meat, spices, and something burning. It only took a moment to realize what the latter was, black smoke rising from the stew pot over the hearth. "Ah, hells," Layla said, tossing off her boots, dropping the log, and running over to the fire. The stew was boiling over, the lid dancing as brown liquid poured from the pot's edge and into the flames below. She grabbed a pair of cooking linens and used them to remove the pot from the heat, setting it on a flat stone beside the fire. She grabbed the ladle, stirring the stew and scraping burnt beans from the pan's bottom to salvage what she could. No, don't be worrying about it, Layla said, her back hunched. I'll take care of it. No need to thank me. No one did. No one said anything. Biting her lip to keep from lashing out, she grabbed bowls and scooped out 3 portions of the burnt stew, then turned. Ollie and Arelda were looking at each other, jaws tight. The bag hadn't moved from the table, but from this angle, Layla could see inside of it. It was full of food, all dropped together into one messy mash that made Layla's mouth water and stomach growl. Bread, carrots, potatoes, lamb, all of it sitting on their table. And what were Ollie and Mother doing but staring at one another, eyes locked in a battle of wills which Layla hadn't the slightest understanding of. Oi, she said, but no one looked her way. With a huff, she stomped her foot on the floor. Oi, what's the matter with you? And what's with all the food? Her words shattered whatever ice had been forming in the room between the two of them. Ollie turned away with a shake of his head, but Arelda rolled her own shoulders back and picked up her chin. Good to see you, dear, she said, turning to Layla. Your brother brought it home? And from the Queen, no less. Queen? Layla turned towards Ollie so quick Stu splattered on the floor. Ain't she dead? She means the princess, Ollie said with a shrug. It's been a long... Make her help us, Layla cried out, stepping towards Ollie, eyes wide. What happened to your arm? And wait, what are you wearing? He looked like he'd been recruited into whatever cult the two outside belonged, his own shabby cloak in a tattered pile near the door. After one day away from town, Layla thought, Mad Rosie might be the only sane one. Ollie opened his mouth to answer, but Layla jabbed her finger in the direction of the chair and snapped, Sit, now. He spread his arms wide in exasperation, but sat anyway. Layla dropped the bowl of stew at their place at the table, then sorted out the mess of food from the bag into the last of their dishware. As for the soggy canvas bag, she topped it atop of Ollie's tattered clothes, trying to ignore the blood-red stains on his cloak. Then she plopped herself down at the table between Ollie and Mother. First we eat, Arelda said. Then we can talk. Make her be blessed, Layla said, nodding. We have a feast. Ollie shook his head, picking up a hunk of lamb from his plate. Don't think Deos has anything to do with this one. Layla waited for her mother to argue, to chide her son for blasphemy, and to bless the maker for the food. But she only leaned forward and picked up a roll. Her eyes roamed over it in a mixture of awe and suspicion. But Layla was too hungry to stare. She bit down on a chunk of sauce-covered potato, giggling with a heady joy that warmed her belly and blurred her vision. Oi, Layla said, when the dishes were away and the extra food stored in old jars. Where's Tuck? Ollie grunted as he used the back of his hand to wipe away sauce from the corner of his mouth. He's safe with a nej. He's healing. Healing? What happened to him? I didn't do nothing. Ollie leaned forward, hands pulling at his hair. Been a hell of a day. He got the worst of it. Layla folded her arms. Best start talking then. Ollie stayed quiet for a long time, eyes locked on the table. Then, with a foul curse, he sat up. Fine. You ain't gonna like it, though. Ollie recalled his day, and Layla hardly believed a word of it. The wall, the deer, the wolves, it all sounded fanciful and distant. But when Ollie talked of Tuck, Layla knew every word rang true. Oli Ricker rarely cried, but his red eyes told her he'd done enough of it tonight. When he muttered about punching Winston, though, Layla stopped him and made him say it again, louder. Oi, I hit him, all right. Ain't nothing to worry about, though. He won't mess with you no more. Made sure of that. Their mother groaned, but Layla sat back with her mouth agape. Ollie only continued on, pushing past the story of Winston as though it were not monumental. He'd hit the magistrate's son. That was either the greatest or the worst thing Ollie had ever done. Layla just couldn't fathom which. Anyways, Ollie continued with a shrug, the princess had me brought to her, and that's where I came from. Dinner. With the princess.
I.
Of Trevelar.
I.
The princess.
Do we have only one?
Before Layla could retort, her mother leaned forward. Ollie, you said she knew about Star Davna, about the wood? Layla glanced at her mother, frowning. Ollie hadn't said a word about that, which meant this wasn't the first time that she had heard of it. Clearly, they had not waited for Layla to return before they'd started talking. So once again, Layla had walked into a conversation between the two of them in which she wasn't a part. Like a child, intruding on the adults' conversation. Ollie shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Layla. Oh, of course, you can't talk in front of the child, can we? Layla thought. They wouldn't lie, but that didn't mean that he would tell her everything. If he could, he'd keep her in the dark to protect her, to keep her safe. Who's Stara Doma? Layla asked, eyes moving from Ollie to Orelda and back. There was silence. Layla leaned back, crossing her arms. Oh, y'all didn't go deaf suddenly, did ya? Orelda coughed. Stara Davna. She was a woman, some believed pushed the Dark Ones back to damnation, all of them years ago in the Great War. I thought it was Deos who did that, Layla said. That's how them stories go anyway. The Maker sent the earthquakes, the lightning, all that. Layla could still recall priests from the Order traveling through and sitting in the square up the hill. They were always men and always old, but they were good storytellers. Layla thought back, reciting what she remembered. And in the 7th year of the war, Deos opened the ground wide, and he allowed the depths of Yeolasi to swallow the armies of Kataraka whole, ending the Epoch War. Orelda shrugged. Your father believed that, in a way. Just thought the earthquakes and lightning was coming from a person, this Star Davna. Father. Layla's heart skipped. She hadn't expected this to turn to her father.
Aye, that's what he thought,
Ollie said, fingers playing with his beard, eyes locked on Orelda. But he didn't think it was something to go talking about. He'd have told her, Orelda said, voice harsh. When she was older, he'd have told her. Ollie clenched his jaw but said nothing. Well, right then, Layla said, drawing the words out so her mind could work. So Pa thought the Maker used this lady to beat the Yelmes. Why does it matter? Because the princess thinks the same, Orelda said. That's why she's here. Layla shook her head. Nope, that doesn't help a bit. Why would she be here? What is this Star Davna? Sure, what does she have to do with us? The question swirled in the air like smoke between them, and Layla crossed her arms and sat back. Nearly any conversation around Roy Riker made Ollie and her mother squirm. Usually Layla let it go, but not tonight. Tonight there was food and soldiers and a princess and a sense that all of Yeolasi was breaking out. Ollie grunted, looking as though he wanted to throw their table across the room. It matters because Pa thought Star Davna was in the wood. The call, the strange beasts, the power of the place, he thought it was her. Ollie's finger jerked to the shelves and the dozen old leather-bound volumes there. These books and scrolls are all just garbage that brought him here, filling his head with nonsense. It's why he came to Watchful at all, why he became a Strazar. All of it was for her. It's why he died, the bastard. Ollie stood, pacing and clenching his fists, eyes roaming anywhere but towards Layla and their mother. Orelda nodded, and Layla saw the faint whisper of a tear in her mother's eyes. He's right, she said, voice just a hush. Your father talked about her for years. He would search the wood, mapping it, learning about it, writing about it, until finally he thought he understood it. He'd found the wood's heart, the place Star Davna called home. Oh, was all Layla could say. Oh, she knew where this would lead, but she didn't have the courage to say it. Ollie kept going. And so he took me, and I was stupid enough to follow him, and they dragged us into the wood and into the deep. Half of us died just trying to get there. The rest... Ollie shook his head, and Layla saw light glisten off a wet trail down his cheek. And now, Orelda said, the princess of Trevelar is here, looking for the same thing your father was. And she is making your brother... Orelda's voice trailed off, her eyes blinking away her own tears. But she didn't need to say it. Layla understood well enough. She's making Ollie take her. Ollie snorted. No one makes me do anything. But you're going, aren't you? Ollie turned and splayed his fingers out flat on the wall, as though he wanted to push the whole house down. No one said a word for a long time, the cracks of the fire and the muffled noise of workers outside filling the space. When Ollie did speak, his voice echoed off the wall before him. I don't think I got a choice. Will she, kill ya? Layla's voice faltered. Ollie shrugged. I think she'd hang me if I said no, but that ain't it. Or that ain't all of it, anyway. Then what? Orelda said, her voice thick and heady. Then why go back? Because she says the Elmes are back, if you can believe it. It's why she wants to go there. And worse, she says they're coming here to Watchful. The world swam, and Layla had to fight to keep upright. Monsters here? They were following her. So all them soldiers outside, everywhere and working, it's because they're getting ready for an attack. I guess, I don't know. She says that if she don't get to Star Davna, then everything here won't last. Everyone... Ollie moved his hand through the air as if wiping the whole town away in his mind. Orelda closed her eyes and bit her lip, her hand shaking against her chest. So if you don't help the princess, then Watchful burns, and us with it. And that was it. What argument could be made now? Her brother would go to the place of his nightmares, where he had watched their father die, because if he didn't, then they would all just die anyways. But for Layla, there existed a before and an after in her life, and it all centered around the death of her father. In the before, there had been times of laughter and smiling and joy. Her mother had been younger, in a sense that was just deeper than just time. And Ollie had just been a boy. The after meant more than just the loss of those things, but the onset of dark days and hungry nights, listening to Ollie fight demons in his sleep. Now there would be another before and after. Would it be worse this time? You don't need to go alone, Ollie, Orelda said in a voice hardly more than a whisper. Not now, Mama, Layla said, but her protests were blown away by the force of Ollie's own. Don't you dare do this, Ollie turned from the wall, jabbing his finger at Orelda. I have been through too much today. Orelda eyed her son as she stood. Oi, you have been, I'll give you that. But he ain't the only one. Her words felt solid enough to touch, spoken with a careful finality that only Orelda Ricker could master. Don't forget that I stepped past the tree line before you were born, walked beneath those boughs while you were in my womb. Do you understand? It ain't just Roy Riker who made you a Strayazar. Ollie said no words, but Layla could hear the grinding of his teeth. Their mother spoke again, words slow and deliberate. All I'm saying is you don't gotta go alone. Ollie shook his head. Yes, I do. If I don't go alone, there ain't no point in going at all. Your life is more than just taking care of us. No, it ain't. Layla sighed. Orelda and Ollie, they were done now. Layla could feel it. They'd both mope off to their corners. Neither would say another word for the night. Oh, monsters may be coming, but it still annoyed Layla that no one asked her about her day, listened to her story about Mad Rosie, or laughed with her about the logs she'd taken. Her eyes drifted to the fire, popping rather nicely, filled with good-looking logs which hadn't been there this morning. The princess had probably sent Ollie back with firewood, too, which meant her own log wasn't really needed. Well, Layla said into the thickening silence, forcing something like a smile on her face. I made a few chits today. Orelda nodded, her bloodshot eyes looking everywhere and nowhere. Oh, right, Ollie said. There's this. He rummaged into a pocket and removed a large coin, throwing it on the table where it clinked and rattled about before coming to a halt before Orelda. She leaned forward, color draining from her face. Layla's eyes tracked from her mother to the coin and back, waiting for an explanation or a revelation to dawn on her. Is that? Orelda stared. A gold Newman. Ollie nodded. If the princess ain't lying, she said she'd give me 500 of them if I take her into the deep. That's a down payment. Layla stared at the piece of metal before her. It was smooth, around the edges, about as wide as her palm. The face of a woman that she didn't recognize had been etched into the clean gold. The edges were engraved in words that, to Layla, were nothing more than squiggles. A gold Newman. She'd never seen one before, hardly ever heard of one. It was worth what? 10 gold pieces? That sounded right. Each gold piece was worth 5 silver Newmans, and those were each worth 10 silver pieces. Layla's mind tried to follow the trail down to the copper Newman, then copper coins. One copper coin broke down into the smallest Trevelarian currency, and the only one that Layla had ever held, a copper chit. She had never been good with numbers, and Layla's mind couldn't grasp the worth of the gold piece before her. She knew the 3 chits she'd made today would buy a loaf of bread, and if she had 10 of them, she'd have the value of 1 copper coin. What Ollie had just thrown on the table could feed them for what? A year? 10 years? 20? How is any of this possible? Layla said, leaning back dumbfounded. Ollie laughed, the sound dark and humorless. Like I said, been a hell of a day.